Hope you guys got a kick out of that intro. We are back at you guys again today with another airbrush tutorial. Today we're going to be walking you guys through how to do a really clean, buttery smooth gradient. And the timing couldn't be better with the release of the Lion King movie this week, as there's going to be a lot of people trying to tackle this theme. And to me, this is the most recognizable imagery from the whole thing, kind of thinking of those iconic posters of the sunset and the silhouettes of the characters walking by, or Mufasa and Simba next to each other from the back. Whatever the case may be, there was a lot of different variations, but they all seem to include this sunset where you have these really warm tones of yellow, orange, and red. And so today we wanted to walk you guys through how you can create that really clean gradient. So in my opinion, creating a gradient is going to be a whole lot easier doing it with an airbrush rather than trying to emulate the same effect with a paintbrush. Now it can be done, but you are up for a little bit of a harder task. So today we're going to be walking you through how you can do it with an airbrush, and there's only a couple things that you'll need. We're going to start with some Angelus paint, and you're going to need some tooth-in to run that cleanly through the airbrush. We're going to be starting this fade with three main colors: yellow into orange and orange into red. So before we actually lay down the paint, we need to think a little bit about our order of color placement. So what I mean by that is, which colors are we going to lay down first, assuming that all of the colors are going to take up the same amount of space on the shoe. So if you're working with similar colors that are close to each other on the color wheel, it's okay to place them in almost any order. It's not as important. But if you're working with colors that are nowhere near each other on the color wheel, that's when you're going to want to start with your darks first. So just for example, if you were doing a yellow into navy blue fade, I would definitely recommend starting with the navy blue and then doing the yellow later. The main reason for that is if you lay down your yellow first and then went into your navy blue, you're going to end up with a little bit of overspray onto your yellow with that navy blue color, and that's going to be a little bit harder to cover up. But in today's video, I'm going to actually start with the yellow, and if I get any overspray of the orange or the red, because the colors are close to each other, it's not going to be as much of an issue. So after that little ramble, now we're just about ready to go ahead and start laying down some paint. But another little tip of mine for creating really seamless gradients is to measure out the total distance from start to finish of the gradient and divide that up by the number of parts that you're going to be painting. So in this case, I'm going to take my total length and divide that up by 3 and just go ahead and mark where I want the colors to start and finish. And this, although not super necessary, is going to make it even easier for me to visualize where I want all of my colors to start and stop. So moving into our yellow, although we're working on a nice white leather base already, I still like to go ahead and start things off by mixing in a couple of drops of white first for my first coat, and then I can move directly into my regular yellow paint. And the reason for this is it's just going to give me a little bit of a better base for the yellow color to sit on top of. I'm now going to follow those same exact steps, mixing in a little bit of white for the first coat, doing that with the orange and also with the red. And when you're working with a really clean white leather base, just like this pair of Bo Jacksons, these are really gonna get done super quickly in about 2 to 3 coats or so. And these initial coats don't have to be perfectly even and blended into each other, because we're gonna take the steps necessary later in order to really make these blends super buttery smooth. So the first thing that we're gonna do to clean these up is what I like to call the middle bar effect. And so what you're going to do here is take an even amount of the two colors that you're trying to blend. In this case, we're going to start at the bottom. So we're going to take an even amount of yellow and an even amount of orange. Go ahead and mix those together in our airbrush with the backflow technique. And we're going to spray that anywhere where these two colors meet. And so obviously you end up with this yellowish orangish color, and what this does is just really clean up any of those areas where it's obvious where the colors are starting and stopping. And now all of a sudden those blends are a little bit cleaner, it's a little bit harder to tell where the colors start and stop, and this is the exact effect that we're going for. Now if these blends aren't already precise enough for you, this still is going to make your job easier if you wanted to go back with either of the colors orange or yellow and spray a little bit over on this middle bar that we just laid down. And a little tip here, as you start working with slightly darker colors, you don't need to use as much of those colors in your mixture. So for example, you wouldn't need to do 50% red, 50% orange. You could start to keep a little bit more of that lighter color in your mixture, something like 60-40. Now, all three of our colors should be blended together pretty nicely thanks to our middle bars. And there's one more step to add at the start and the finish of our gradients that's really going to pack an extra punch and make this a whole lot more visible from afar. So for example, since this gradient starts with yellow at the bottom and red at the top, what I then want to do is pack a really dark red at the top and a really light yellow at the bottom. And so if we think about our gradient being split into thirds of 33% yellow, 33% orange, and 33% red, what I want to do is pack in these colors at the bottom 5 to 10% or so. So what I'm going to do is take a mixture of about 75% white, 25% yellow, and hit this near the midsole of the entire shoe. And what you'll be able to see is I'm basically spraying directly at the tape laid down at the midsole. I'm almost not even trying to hit a lot of the upper with this, as it's going to be super subtle, but it's going to add a lot of light at the bottom of this gradient. And now at the top, since black is so strong, I'm going to take a mixture of roughly about 90% red or so, mix in about 10% black, and then we're just going to go ahead and hit this near the top sock liner of our shoes. And same thing here, we're not trying to overpower it with this color. We want this to be really subtle and just lightly misted near the top of this gradient. And now what we've essentially done with this last step is widen the range of the color spectrum that we have in our gradient by adding this really light yellow into this really deep dark red. And it's super subtle, but like I said, it's really going to strengthen the appeal of this entire gradient when looking at the entire thing from afar. So now that we're done with that gradient, we're going to go ahead and incorporate a little bit of our own style into these and finish them off with all of the Lion King themed designs that our client wanted. So now let's go ahead and give you a look at how these turned out. So I think that you guys would be surprised how many themes actually call for a gradient and how important these are to continually get better at. These are something that I'm even still working at and trying to get better at constantly. And I think this pair, for example, even without all of this stuff that we included on top, was just really cool looking. This Bo Jackson that had this kind of sunset looking gradient. It's definitely a design that will always be appealing to people. So definitely keep sending us what you guys are able to create by applying some of the stuff that we talk about here on YouTube. We love seeing that stuff from you guys, so keep on sending it. Alright, that's all we have for you guys today. Go ahead, feel free to let us know what you think about the new Lion King movie down below, what you think about this pair of shoes. We would love to hear some other feedback from you guys on topics just like this that you would like to see us go a little bit more in depth on. Other than that, we will see you guys in our next video.